Hi guys, in this video I'm just going to be going over some basics for Premiere. It's a nice editing package that's on all the school computers, and we recommend using it for editing together your final video and audio for the final crit. So when you export video or render video from Maya, it doesn't actually come in as video, it comes in as a rendered image for every frame of your animation. So those images are not automatically video, and you have to assemble and compile them in a video software such as Premiere. And also because you might want to add audio, cut together the clip a little bit, work some editing magic into this. Some of you might not know Premiere, so I'm just going to go over it a little bit. First of all, rendering in Maya. So on the class website under Resources, How to Render Guide, you'll find a render guide that was made by Michelle Ma last year. I've put it up for your convenience. It's really nice and simple and clear. Things like how to position your camera, how to use resolution gate, setting your project directory, setting your render settings, and rendering an image sequence. She also really quickly goes through exporting the image sequence into Premiere and into After Effects, but since she doesn't explain at all how to really use Premiere, if you want to do anything more than just importing the sequence, you might be a little lost, so I'm just going to go over that real quick. So when you go into Premiere, you'll basically get this window, and you're going to want to start a new project. This can be anywhere, and you can name it anything. So when you get into this, the first thing you're going to want to do is, of course, import the images that you rendered from Maya. So you can do that down here in this little window where it says Import Media to start. This is the Premiere standard layout, so this should be here on the left corner, bottom left corner. There's really no reason to change the standard layout. It'll work fine. So if you right click over this, you'll be able to import. And here you can go find the folder where you have your image sequence, which is, for me, right here. This is an old video I had for something I did a bit ago. And so what you want to do is you want to click the first image in your image sequence. You can see housevideo.0001, 0002, 3, 4, 5, etc. But you only want to click the first image, and then click here, image sequence. Check that box. If you're on a Mac, there will be a little pull-down menu option somewhere here, probably like saying settings or something like that, and then the same box will be there for you to check. So if you just click that and click your first image and click open, when Premiere imports, it won't just import the image, it'll import the entire animation compiled as a video. So now if I play it, you see it's a video now. So the next thing you're going to want to do after you put this in is you're going to want to restart or, fix your sequence settings. So if you go into sequence settings, you're going to want to change your time base. Instead of 29.97 frames per second, you're going to want to go 24. This is because in Maya, the standard for animation, just the standard for animation in general is 24 frames per second, but in Maya, the default for real time is also 24 frames per second. So if you don't change your sequence settings to 24 frames per second, it's going to compile the video in the wrong way, and you're going to end up having it be too fast or too slow. So now that we have this video in here, that plays fine. That's great, that's fine. Basically, you can do simple things like cutting it, moving it, shortening it, all sorts of things like that. This window over here is for a lot of things like effects. You have an audio clip mixer, other data. There's a lot of things you can do in this window. This is basically your timeline, same in Maya. You can go through things. And here we have just the window, This is also a timeline, but just for you to scrub and things like that. So Premiere is a pretty, it's a deep program. There are lots of things you can do, from color to effects and all sorts of things. But I'm just going to go over like the real basics so you can get this done. So when whatever clip you select, you can drag it up here, and then that clip will be what's being edited. But I prefer, for simple things, to do my editing down here in this timeline editor. So right here we have a bar that lets you slide along the timeline. This timeline goes to, say, 11 minutes, but it doesn't matter because Premiere will just Premiere, when you finally export your final video, will export only to whatever the longest bit of video or audio is. So you don't need to worry about that. What you do need to worry about is this slider right here, how that shrinks and gets bigger. This will make it so you're zooming in to a bit of your video, or you're zooming out to see the whole thing. If you're really wanting to cut out maybe a very specific little bit, then you can go all the way down to basically the frame level. Like, this is a frame each. And say I decide that I want to cut this right here. I could go use this tool right here, which is the razor tool. Click it, and then position the timeline slider right where I want to cut it. And if I click right above that, it'll cut it right there. So now these are two different video clips. And this way I can, if I want to, start rearranging my video clips and doing some sort of editing if I feel like that would increase the appeal of my animation. If you right click on any of these, you can also change, different things. One of the most important would be speed duration. This shouldn't be used as like a backup fix-it-all because you didn't time your animation right. You should do all your timing in Maya. But if something is like working just not right enough, you can change the speed a little bit. This also works really well for audio. If you have audio that's just a little bit too fast or a little bit too slow, and it won't mess with it too much to, decrease the speed or increase the speed to fit your video, that also works as well. So the way Premiere works is these are basically layers. You have video layers up here and audio layers down here. If I put this video layer above this video layer, I won't see the rest of this video layer. As soon as this layer gets to here, whatever is on top in the layer order gets precedence on what gets seen. Now, if you wanted to have something with an alpha, basically that's clear, then you would be able to see this video underneath. So if you had a clear circle here, let's see if I can show an example. I just need here's this random thing I have. So basically this is a giant hand from this project, and you can see that it's on the top layer, and as soon as I get to the top layer, as soon as I get to this point in the timeline when the clip starts, it pops into screen. But since it has an alpha channel because it's a PNG, I can also see the things underneath it. So if you want some sort of effect that involves an alpha or like layering, or you want to add some sort of foreground 2D element, this is a great way to do it. But since I'm fine with this animation as it is, I'm just going to, drag this back down here. And in Premiere, video clips snap together, so that's handy. As well, if you want to shorten your video clip, if you go into basically the edges of the video clip and hover your mouse over, you'll get these little arrow things. What I'm doing right now is I'm shortening the clip. So like this is technically the end now, even though it wasn't the end before, there's more video. What's nice about this though is that it is shortening the clip, but it's more like it's hiding the stuff that's not being shown. So if you feel like you made a mistake and you want actually more at the end, you can go and you can drag it out again, basically all the way to the end of what you cut off. That can be done at the beginning as well, or however, or wherever you want. So now for audio. If you right click above here, we import something else. Let's import audio. This is just random audio I found online. Okay, that was weird. Here we go. It's just in the Hall of the Mountain King. So if we drag it down here under the A one, so remember up here is video, up here, down here is audio. You're going to want to drag it to one of these slots. So audio 1, and we play it. See, at this point it's hard to hear because it's very, very quiet, and here is where we can use the cutting tool right here, the razor tool. And let's say I want to just cut it. It looks like the audio waves, you can see them about here, get a lot louder in this section, so I'm just going to cut it here so we can use it. Click on this and just click delete, so I can delete that and drag this over so we can hear the music. Right, so we now have audio. Now with this audio, you know, you can have a background track, a little bit of ambient noise, you know, wind, but you can also add sound effects. So for example, if your character is hitting something with a hammer, every time the hammer hits, why not add a clinking sound effect? There are a lot of places you can get sound effects online, and it really adds a lot to your animation to have Foley, basically. So I'm not going to do that for this here right now because you get the idea. You have a small Foley sound, you import it, you drag it over here, and what you would do is, say, I take this, and we're going to pretend it's a shorter clip. Actually, maybe that's not the best place to get a clip from, but this is the same audio, but I'm basically just going to be taking a tiny clip of it, and the audio in the audio section of the timeline will basically layer over each other. It's not like this one won't be heard because this one is on top of it. Right, so you can see that the audio is calmer here, which is normal, but then since I added this clip from later on when it gets more intense right here, it just merges in and it's just kind of. So the other thing you should know when it concerns audio is how to edit the volume. So if you click an audio clip and you go into effects controls, you can see right here you have audio effects. So you have volume, bypass level, some other stuff, but really I'm guessing that all you're going to really need is this level control, which is basically the volume. It starts at 0 decibels. I'm not really sure what silence is in decibels. I've always just used -60 because it seems to have worked in the past for me, but you can test it out however you want. So here we can see if we use this slider and we make this a little bit bigger and zoom in, you can really see the audio channels better, the way the sound is working. And the way you use effect controls in Premiere is that you set keyframes. So for example, if right here, you know, this starts off, you know, it starts off there, it's, you know, the music is there, it's loud. If I set this to -60, it'll auto keyframe because I haven't set any keyframes before. So now we have a keyframe here that's really low. So basically you're hearing nothing, whereas there was music before. And then say I want it to fade, I want the audio to fade into 100% of what the original audio is right here. Then all I would have to do is I would have to go up here again and change it back to 0. And again, it auto keyframes. you can see these keyframes here, and you can click them and delete them, and then it's gone. And then say you want to put it back again, all you have to do to add a keyframe or remove a keyframe is also, you could also just click this. So you could remove it, add it, or you could just delete them from here. Wait a second. I'm going to set this back to 0. Right. And what's nice in the audio is that you can see this actual changing. This tangent line that appeared right here is the way the audio is going, so it's linear, see? Like that. So now if we listen to it, see? So it starts from close to nothing and quickly rises. If you don't want, there are other ways to do this. For example, over here, if you still want it to be -60, if you want it to stay silent for a while, you can add, another keyframe, and you can see it right here. It stays silent for this bit and then sharply increases upwards. What you can also do, which is cool, is you can move the keyframe in this little bit, so you can do it in this more visual style, with the audio levels. That's basically all you really need to know with audio, is how to control the levels, so you can make things mesh so something isn't too loud or isn't too quiet, or you can add more subtle effects, and how to cut things, basically using the razor tool, using the dragging tool to shorten your clips, etc., etc. Let's just drag this to make it smaller again. Of course there are other tools here, but it's just not super useful for you guys just to make your video clips. So if we click on this again, the video, you'll see we also have effects for video. Basically whatever clip you have clicked on is what clips effects will show up. You can always add more effects to this list of effects, because right now they only have the basic standard ones, which is position, scale, rotation, and opacity. So for example, if I click scale and I move this, I guess you can't really tell that well. Oh, that's why. Sorry. I had this clip selected, but then what happened is the timeline was over this clip, so it's obviously not going to show me anything happening. So I'm on this clip, and right now it's at 0 scale, and now it's getting bigger, smaller, bigger, smaller, and you can key this just like anything else. So if I want to have this keyed here, I would click this little, this menu is slightly different than the audio one, but all you have to do is click this little time icon. Yep, there we go, and then you get the key. And then say right here I want it to be much bigger. It's auto keyed for me. And this looks kind of awful because the video itself is zooming and we're zooming it right now, but this is just an example, of course. Things like that. You can key position, scale, opacity is something you can key, and that is really nice to use for if you want to fade out at the end of your video or fade in. So right here, if I want to fade in from black, I would click this video, take the opacity to 0, it's keyed, and then right here take the opacity back to say 100, and you can see that it starts from black and fades as it goes to 100. And you can kind of see the video here, which is like a nice little preview, but I don't think it's totally necessary when you have this big video screen up here. So honestly, I really think that's the basics of cutting together audio and video in Premiere. All you really need to know is remember razor tool to cut things. You can shrink and, you can non-destructively shrink your clips, non-destructively shrink your audio, and add clips in by importing, dragging, and cutting, and adjusting the volume to fit. Premiere renders your video out for you afterwards, because this is still an image sequence. It's just Premiere's playing the image sequence as video. At the end, you're still going to have to render this whole thing out as an actual video. But remember that right here, you see we have this really long audio strand kind of going on. There's really not much there, but it's there. When Premiere renders, what it does is it takes the longest thing that's in your timeline here, and it renders it up until this point. So instead of ending right here where the video ends at 1:21, it's going to end here instead. And so you're just going to get black. It's going to cut to black right here, and then you're going to get a little bit of audio. So what you want to do is you just want to cut and make sure that that's deleted, so your video and your audio end in the same place, unless you don't want them to. So now that my video is all spick and span and all nice, I just go to File, Export, Media. For some reason it's not exporting. It doesn't want to export for me. That's weird. I've never really come across this before. I don't think I've ever paid attention to it, but it's probably because it wants me to be in the timeline, so it knows what exactly I'm exporting. You can have like several projects in one Premiere file. You can have different timelines. So probably just make sure you're clicked into this timeline before you go to File, Export, Media. That's going to take you to this little window for export. And so your format, you're going to want to go H.264. That'll work well for us, and it's decently compressed, so it's not huge. If you want different formats, you can also export as different formats, but I would recommend H.264. Match source high bitrate works because what that's going to do is that's just going to match whatever resolution your image sequence came in at. So if my image sequence, if I rendered my images in Maya at 1920 by 1080, that's what they would come in as, and that is what I did. So here you can see that's what it is. It's match source, so you can't change it, but there are also a bunch of other options that you could use, but this one should be fine. In your output name, you can click on here, and then you can choose somewhere to output. You can name it something, and then that's where your video file will be saved. And then, let's see, this is just a summary. It's 24 frames per second. You might want to check these things, but it's not really all that important because there's not much to mess up. And then, instead of queuing, you're going to want to export, because queuing will need Adobe Media Encoder, and you don't really want to mess with that too much. So if I just export right here, you can see that it's rendering the audio files, and then after that it'll be encoding your video. So you're just going to have to wait. Depending on how complex you get with your editing, how much audio you add, and also the size and length of your animation, your image sequence, it'll change how long this will take. Usually it doesn't take all that long, but you should plan to leave half an hour just in case something goes wrong. So you don't really need to watch this go, but basically at the end, when this is all done, there will be a nice finished MP4 video in the folder that I specified. So those are the bare basics of Premiere. It's enough to get you working, it's enough to get you cutting together video, and that's really all you need. But there are tons of other things you can do, in the effects window, audio, lots of things. So I think that's it. I think I also clicked something in Premiere and it's not liking me right now. Alright, so we're in audio right now. Go back to effects. Right. You can see that, okay. you can see that there are a lot of different effects you can use. All these things: blur, sharpens, color distortion, control, stylize. There are also transition ones that you can add, but right now we're not going to focus on those because these sorts of transitions won't be useful like really all that much in a single scene. And yeah, you could work with a little bit of stylization, which basically adds like a little bit of like Photoshop filters or something like that. And there are things you can do to make it look better. You can work with the color correction. So if you want to, fix your color a little bit, you're not super into how it's looking and you want it to be, more blue or more red, that's something you can look into. I'm not going to go into it here, but if you look online for tutorials, you can just, Google Adobe Premiere color correction and you'll find a quick way to do it. But this is my simple tutorial on just how to get your project done. So that is all for me. If you have any more questions on these sorts of things, don't be afraid to reach out to me or Mo or Jimmy. And, good luck on your final projects.